The day I laughed at an old woman was the day my life ended. I will never forget the moment the mirror turned on me. It was not a crack from a fall, but a betrayal from within the glass. The laughter died in my throat, replaced by a cold dread that seized my heart. There, on the smooth, beautiful surface of the glass, a tiny crack appeared. A thin line splitting my flawless face in two. It was as if a spider web had been etched into the very core of my perfect reflection. I stood there, frozen, unable to breathe. Just last night, I had laughed at the curse of an old woman, believing my beauty was a shield no magic could ever touch. Before this moment, I was Leah, the golden girl of my village, a bright jewel polished by the South African sun. My beauty was my whole world. While other people went to work, I would sit in front of my grand mirror, painting my lips red and my eyes dark. I was always behind that mirror, a life of chores was beneath me. When my mother would call me for house chores, I would just shake my head and say, "Mama, I am too beautiful for that. My hands are made for pearls, not for washing pots or scrubbing floors." I was so always behind that mirror, that I could almost hear it sighing with weariness. If the mirror were a human, it would have complained that it was tired of my prideful reflection. My arrogance was getting out of hand, a poison in my heart so strong no one could ever stand me. My parents, on several occasions, advised me to be more humble, and to stop my foolish ways. But I would just ignore their advice, and walk away. My friends loved me, but I did not return their kindness. I laughed at them for marrying simple men, saying, "I, Leah, will marry a king. My beauty is meant for a throne." I believed this with all my heart. My mirror told me I was a queen, and I listened to no one else. But that tiny crack was a sign that my perfect world was about to fall apart. And I did not yet know. My reflection would betray me forever. My world began to truly crack the day I went to the market. Dressed in my finest clothes, I walked with my head held high, ignoring the whispers of the villagers who said my heart was empty. Suddenly, an old woman named Mumby, carrying a heavy load of firewood, stumbled and bumped into me. Her firewood scattered, and one dirty log fell on my new dress. I was filled with rage. "You old fool," I shouted. "Look what you have done. You have ruined my dress." Mumby looked up with kind, blurry eyes. "I am so sorry, daughter," she said. "My eyes can't see well." I just scoffed. "If you can't see, you should stay in your hut," I yelled. "You have ruined my fine cloth." The people around us told me to apologize, but I just laughed, turned my back, and walked away. But as I walked, I heard Mumby's voice behind me, raised like thunder. "Leah," she shouted, and the market went dead silent. The clouds gathered, and the birds stopped chirping. "The mirror you worship will soon turn its back on you. May your beauty melt like candle wax. May your pride become your prison. You shall not see beauty again until you marry the ugliest man on earth. Then, and only then, shall your heart learn." A cold wind blew. I laughed at her words, but that night, in my hut, I felt a strange heat on my skin. I laughed again, but in the reflection, the glass cracked. A thin line appeared on my face in the glass. The next morning, I woke up with an unbearable itch all over my body. I ran to my mirror, filled with a terrible sense of dread. The reflection that stared back at me was not mine. Ugly, red sores covered my once smooth skin, and my flawless face was a patchwork of them. My perfect hair withered away like a dry leaf. I screamed, a sound filled with pure terror, and fell to the floor, crying. My perfect face was gone. My mother came to me and told me my ugliness was a result of my pride, and the curse of Mumby. My days of laughter and compliments were over. The villagers who once admired me, now turned away in disgust. Children pointed at me and called me the cursed one. I tried to go out, but my shame was too great. I was a beautiful girl trapped in a nightmare, and the curse was a lonely prison. The sickness on my body and the sadness in my heart grew heavier with each passing day. I had lost everything, but I would soon learn that my physical ugliness was only a shadow of the true curse upon me. My misery was about to increase, tenfold. For many long and lonely days, my life was a living hell. The sores on my body grew worse, and my hair fell out completely. I cried day and night, but my tears did nothing to bring back my old life. The shame of my ugliness, and the loneliness of my days, became a terrible pain. The people who once admired me now treated me like a ghost. My pride, my only shield, was gone, replaced by a deep sadness and a bitter lesson. One day, filled with a desperate hope, I decided I had to apologize to the old woman, Mumby, and beg her to remove the curse. I walked to her hut, but when I got there, it was empty. The old woman was nowhere to be found. I cried and cried, my case getting worse with each passing day. The sickness on my body and the sadness in my heart grew heavier. A friend told me about a wise herbalist who could help with strange problems. With a glimmer of hope in my heart, I went to her, my ugly face hidden by a shawl. The herbalist looked at me with sad eyes and told me, "My child, your illness is not of the body, but of the heart. The only way to be free is to face your biggest fear. You will find your answer in this letter." My heart pounded. I was about to discover what terrible price I had to pay for my freedom. I took the letter with shaking hands and learned its terrible truth. The herbalist told me what it said. You have to be with the ugliest man across town to be free. I was shocked. I, who had wanted to marry a king, now had to marry the ugliest man. My heart sank to my stomach. This was the curse. My pride had been my ruin, and now I had to find a cure in the one thing I had always hated: ugliness. So, I started my long and painful search. 4 days, I walked through town, looking for someone I never thought I would need. I, the once beautiful Leah, now looked for the one thing I had always looked down on. One morning, just as the sun was rising, there was a loud knock on our door. My mother opened it, and standing there was a man so incredibly ugly, it took my breath away. He was short and fat, with a big nose and ears that stuck out. My mother looked at me with pity. He had come to propose to me. As he walked in, he let out a loud fart, and the whole hut smelled terrible. I knew what I had to do. I had no other choice. That nod would lead me into the darkest days of my life. My life changed completely when I married the ugly man, Queasy. My beautiful dresses were replaced with old, worn rags. My days were no longer spent in front of a mirror, but in a small, smelly hut. Queasy did not treat me like a wife, he treated me like a servant. I had to wash his dirty, smelly feet, and scratch his back, which was full of boils. I cooked his food, and washed his stinking clothes. Queasy was a mean man. He would shout at me and call me names, and he never once said a kind word to me. I was treated like a slave, and my life was a living hell. But through all the pain, something began to change inside me. I began to understand what it meant to be humble. I saw how cruel and selfish my pride had made me. The pain I was feeling now was nothing compared to the pain I had caused others. I repented of all my bad actions and started to pray. In my heart, I promised to be a good person and never be proud again. I became very lean and thin, my body and spirit broken. I was close to giving up, not knowing that this lowest point was exactly where my journey to redemption truly began. I felt like I couldn't go on. My body and my spirit were broken, and I was on the verge of giving up on life. One night, as I lay on my mat, hungry and sad, I fell into a deep sleep. In my dream, I was standing in front of my old mirror, the one with the crack in it. But this time, it was not ugly. The crack was gone. In the reflection, I saw the old woman, Mumby, with a kind smile on her face. "Leah," she said, her voice soft and gentle. "You have passed the test. The mirror did not lie. It showed you your heart, and your pride became your prison. But you have changed. You are now a new person. Your heart is released." I woke up with a gasp, the dream still fresh in my mind. I looked down at my hands. The sores were gone. I ran to the small piece of glass I had, and looked at my face. I was shocked. My old beauty had returned. At that very moment, my ugly husband Queasy came in. He looked at me and shouted in surprise, "No, this is not my wife. My wife is ugly." For the first time, his cruelty made me smile, because it meant I was free. I thanked him for being the test I needed, and left his hut to return to my village. not knowing that my greatest challenge was still to come. When I returned to my village, people were shocked. They saw the same beautiful Leah, but something was different. My face was beautiful, but my eyes were full of a new kindness. The whispers of disgust were replaced by looks of surprise and admiration. I walked through the market and smiled at everyone I met. I went to my mother and apologized for being so cruel to her. I went to my friends and asked for their forgiveness. I did house chores without complaining and helped the old women in the village carry their heavy bags. The children, who once ran from me, now came and held my hand. I was no longer the proud Leah. I was the humble Leah. And people loved the person I had become. My story spread far and wide, from one village to the next. People talked about how a girl, once cursed by her pride, had found true beauty through humility. But my journey was not over. A final test of my heart was on its way, in the most surprising form imaginable. One day, a young prince from a town far away heard my story. He wanted to see if the story was true, so he came to my village in the clothes of a poor beggar. He came to my hut and asked me for food and water every single day. He disturbed me always, but I treated him with kindness and respect. I gave him my last food and clean water, and I spoke to him with a gentle voice. I did not know he was a prince. I thought he was just a simple man in need. I never complained about his constant visits, or his messy clothes. My heart was truly changed. The kindness I showed him was not a test, it was just who I had become. The prince, seeing my true nature, was deeply impressed. He went away, and I returned to my simple life, happy to serve others. I had no idea that my simple acts of kindness had just opened the door to a life I had once only dreamed of. A few evenings later, my parents came to me with bright smiles. "Someone wants to marry you," my father said. "He is a kind and rich man." My heart fluttered, with a nervous hope. The man who came to our door was the beggar, now dressed in royal clothes, with a large group of servants and soldiers behind him. I was shocked. I couldn't believe my eyes. "It is you," I whispered. He smiled, a kind and honest smile. "Leah," he said, "I am a prince. I heard your story, and I came to see if it was true. You are more beautiful now than any queen in the world. Your heart is the most precious jewel." He told me how he had come as a beggar, to see if I had truly changed. I was married into the palace, not because of my looks, but because of my kind heart. I became a queen, but I never forgot my past. I treated my maids and servants with kindness and respect, just as I had learned to do. I became a mother for all the people, helping orphans, giving hope to the hopeless, and giving advice to young girls about pride and humility. The mirror that once betrayed me had taught me the greatest truth of all. That beauty fades, but kindness reflects forever.